But while we're under here, we can see we can just use the existing holes for that molding and put it back to where it was before. So just go ahead and get the old molding, clean off the top of it, put new putty tape underneath, and then screw it back on. Now personally, the easiest way I've found to put really long sticks of molding back on all by yourself is to find one of the holes right here, make a mark through the membrane. And we are going with some much longer screws this time. The ones I had in there were too short. Go ahead and put one screw in, just about right there, so it's sticking out as a ledge. Find a couple screw holes in the front, roughly put it into place, get it lined up, get that screw put in, just lightly at first. Get the next one started. Now we can come back to the first one we put in right there. Take it back out, and then get it lightly started now. Now, it's going to be very easy to line up, pulling this tight and putting the screws in. You don't have to worry about drilling holes and slipping off and tearing the membrane. We don't want to do that. But at this point, that's really all I've got to do is put a whole bunch of screws in, pull the material tight, get as many wrinkles as I can, and then wait for this stuff on top to cure, cut some holes, and put it all back together. Now, while it's true, TPO will not stretch a lot. You can stretch it a little bit and get the wrinkles out by pulling it tight. Just don't pull too hard. You should be able to pull this tight and get a pretty good looking seam on the radius all the way across if you take your time. I'm not going to cut this yet because I still do want to be able to use this as a handle. We still have to put the vinyl track in anyway, so let's cut it at that point. I wish it wasn't so much work, but both sides are done. This roof is much longer than I remember it being, but I'm really glad I had my motorhome here to help do all that. And you can kind of see when it gets pulled tight, it does deform a little bit. You can see all my fingerprints pulling the TPO membrane tight. Obviously, I can't step on the roof yet until it cures. My next step is to go get some gutter spouts so I can put behind the rails I just put on. They'll go right there. And then I can put the insert on there, then we can trim underneath and seal on top. All right, so the next step, we're gonna put the gutter spouts on. They go underneath that molding that we just put on, which is why I haven't done this yet. I had to go get these. But we're also gonna be using the Dicor non-sagging lap sealant on top of the molding right there, and then behind to seal up the holes that we're putting in. If there's any good advice I can give you, is this stuff is very, very messy. It's like marshmallow fluff. So don't try to tool it like you normally would with a sealant. But we're also going to want a brand new, nice sharp razor blade and our knife, because we're going to be cutting the excess membrane now at the same time. That's better. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is pre-drill these holes right here. So I'm not trying to do this balancing in the air like that. Just need to loosen up a couple of these screws here. Allow that to flex a little bit better. And then these will act as a beauty cap and a very functional idea of keeping the water when it's coming down the gutter right there away from the sidewall. And there are 4 of them, but there's 2 sets. There's a left side and a right side, so you want to make sure you get the right one going. And it can be confusing if you don't know what they're supposed to look like. So this is the rear one. It's going to go right behind here, just like that. But because we don't want it to leak, we're going to go ahead and put some sealant behind it. Of course, you want to use this stuff rather than a silicone or a Lexel, because this will actually adhere and stick to the membrane better than the other sealants. And then we just go ahead and put it behind. Make sure we have it where we want it to be. So I took out those screws. That one. All right, now this is going to be the one that'll hold the gutter in place right here. And because I was a little bit messy, because I put a little bit too much on it, hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. It's like a marshmallow fluff. It's very sticky. And you're not going to be able to tool it very well without making a mess all over your fingers. If we can do this all in one pass, hopefully. Let's get our vinyl insert right here. I think this is 1 inch. We'll pop it in right down there. And because we already drilled that screw hole too, I don't really like wrapping it around the molding like the factory does. All right, now that's not going to fall off in the wind. And now we can just go ahead and get this stuff going. It's always easy to use a bone, this plastic bone, usually for windshields. You get one edge started, get the other one going. Now the next step is going to be to run a bead of this sealant. It's going to be a cap seal. This is the one we're not going to tool. Might be going a little bit too thick at the front there. Just like that. If you do try to tool it, like I said, you're just going to make a mess. Otherwise, the next step after that, you get your knife, hold down, and just cut on the bottom side of the membrane right there. A nice sharp blade. Down the whole length of the RV on both sides. Is make sure that it's non-sagging die core. Don't get the sagging die core. Take some solace in the fact that this is up high and most nobody can see this. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to wait to cut the rest of this until I get this top molding put on. But I can't really do that until I can walk on the roof. Give yourself a lot of grace. Doesn't have to be perfect, but don't forget to have a rag right there to catch your mess, because the sealant does like to ooze out and you don't want to clean up your roof that you're using as a scaffolding. And I didn't even use a complete tube for this entire side, so you don't have to use too much of it. It's pretty straightforward and simple. All you have to do is work your way down, usually do the insert, cut, and then seal. That way the sealant doesn't get on your fingers if you do it in the wrong order. But just take your time, you'll get there. Not too bad, kind of fun, and a little bit therapeutic. I just have one more side to do, then hopefully start putting stuff back on the roof. All right, so with the other side done over here, we got the front molding to do and the rear molding. We're just going to go ahead and clean those off. I got a scraper over here. We're really just going to remove all the old stuff on top. Pretty easy. Pretty much just like that. Then we're going to flip it over and we'll scrape out the old butyl. Just using a plastic scraper like this, we'll get all the old stuff off so we can put new stuff on. I'm just get some new butyl putty tape right here. Start installing it. This stuff is much easier to work with when it's cooler outside. If it's hot, it's like trying to move tar. And just rip it off and then come back, put some pressure on it, put the paper backing still on it, and hopefully the paper backing comes off okay without causing the putty to pull off the trim. All right, now with that done, don't forget to do the other termination bar, and then we're going to get on the roof and get it installed and finish trimming out that membrane. All right, so here we got the front of the cap. This is the part that I always say this is how it should go. The membrane on top of the cap and then the molding on top of the membrane. If we do put the membrane underneath the cap, if this molding comes loose, the water will just go straight into the front cap, which is a bad thing. If we put it on top like this, if the molding comes loose, the membrane, like a shingle, will still direct water over the top of the cap instead of into the roof. That's how I think it should be done, no matter what everybody else online says. What we're going to do is there's a long side to the molding here and then a flush side. So the long side is going to be on the roof or deck side, so that we have that step up into the cap right there. Just lay it out real fast. So I did mark where the first hole is for this because I did use the same molding for that I took off, and we'll use the same screws that I took off because they were longer and thicker. Now, the old roof went into the deck right here. I'd like to go on top of the fiberglass itself. So what I'm going to do is mark where I want to drill a hole, but I do want to drill a hole through the fiberglass because I don't want the screws to grab onto the fiberglass. I want it to grab onto the deck below. Just like that. I use like a 1/16 drill bit right here to pre-drill it. And then follow up with a 3/16 to get through that fiberglass and not into the deck. And then with a couple of the screws in right here, we'll go ahead and start pre-drilling the rest of them. All right, now with almost all those installed now, I'm not going to cut it yet. I'm going to take a pin. I'm going to go ahead and make a mark right here all the way around on both sides because we're going to do one little insurance right at the corners. Go ahead and remove these screws back out again. And with those loose, we can actually pull this back again. We can see our mark, right? So now we can use just a little bit more of this non-sagging lap sealant underneath here. Just like that, to ensure that on the odd sense that water might get under there, that has now filled the gap a little bit better. And of course we'll do this on the other side too, and then we'll just cut it loose. As this is normally where they start to pull up. Go ahead and here's that extra stuff there. And over here, smear it out a little bit so the lap sealant won't be too difficult to put down. And now we can take a nice sharp razor blade or knife and then cut the membrane. And then we can just go ahead and remove the front flap because we're done with this now. We're going to do the exact same thing back here on the rear cap. We get to start doing the fun stuff, and that means we're almost done with the new membrane. Not done with the RV though. Still got lots more to do. Okay, and then just like that, the membrane is done. Now it's just time for assembly, and this is my favorite part because I just get to sit back and stop thinking about things. Now, unlike the manufacturers in most how-to videos, I will not leave a flap on most of my openings, with the exception of the skylight. I find that they get in the way and cause a lot of problems, and there's going to be a flange on top of this screwing this whole thing down anyways. So for every roof opening, with the exception of the skylight right there, I'm just going to cut it completely flush with the opening. Now I'm still going to use the butyl putty tape on the flange right here, just like the instructions will actually say to do, because the flanges on these vents is pretty thick, and so it will compress pretty well. And the deck itself is close to being 1/2 inch thick, so it should grab on pretty well too, being able to compress this putty. If it was just 1/8 inch paneling, I would go with more of a liquid sealant, like a liquid butyl, just like I'm going to do with all my skylights, because if you don't compress this, it's not doing anything. And then definitely, unlike most factories, I'm going to use the right-headed screw for these flanges because we're going to go through the metal track right there. We want to make sure it goes all the way through there. And down below. I don't know if you saw the butyl ooze out. We would have gone with a hex-headed screw or one of my favorite lath-headed screws. The head of the screw wouldn't have gone past there. We would have had a big opening for water to get in. And the factories definitely like to do that from time to time. We'll go ahead and remove the excess butyl up here so it doesn't interfere with the lap sealant. It does mean we got some pretty good adhesion screws got nice and tight because it did ooze out the boodle. All right, so with that all cleaned up, I know that there is a sewer vent right about here. I can feel that one. And now, because it's just 1.5 inch ABS, I can just glue this on as an extension. And with that in place, I can just measure this out and decide where I want to cut the extension. Which seems right about there. I mean, it really couldn't be any simpler. And to get that vent stack out of the way, when you're doing the membrane, that'll just go right there. I have 2 more to find. There's one right there. Just like that. And then one more right here. Very simple. Now, I will just be using these Danco sewer vent covers right here. And because this flange is not nearly as robust, I will be using no more liquid butyl sealant underneath there. We'll make sure we have a nice tight seal underneath there where it oozed out. And I don't have to worry about it being tight at each screw head, but loose in the middle. So that fills the gap really well. This time I will be using my lath-headed screws because, again, this is plastic and we want as much surface area down onto that plastic as we can to make sure that we're not busting through it. Just like that. I've just seen too many times where the amount of pressure it takes to compress this butyl tape causes it to pucker right here in between the 2 screws, so it doesn't even do its job. So if we just have that liquid sealant, it does a lot better. All right, now really one of the last steps for me to do here is going to put the ACs back on. To do that, we do have to cut the material right here again, and this is definitely a spot where I do not want to have membrane flapping around. I know the manufacturer will have it like that, but this is the plenum box and the air box, where the air will be cycling and circling around in here, going into the ductwork right here. And having those things flopping about will cause some serious problem. Now, usually at this point, I like to go ahead and seal up everything in this box so it's a lot more efficient, but I'll probably get to do that afterwards. Because what I first need to do is fix the problem with the roof AC unit that we saw before. If you guys remember, when we pulled off the AC unit, there were some holes back here from the bolts holding down the compressor that made their way through the roof membrane. Now, I would normally say we'll put a new gasket on here and that'll solve the problem, but this gasket doesn't look like it got compressed that much. But the weight of the AC back here did compress this quite a bit. So I think what I want to do is cheat a little bit. I got a new gasket set, a dual gasket set. I don't know who the manufacturer is on this one, but it was a good price and I can't argue with that, and it came with all the extra bits that I want. Now, this is still a very dense foam and not that Camco really light foam gasket seal that you can buy aftermarket, so we do want to make sure it's pretty robust. Now we're going to go ahead and clean this part right here. We'll try to be a little bit smarter than Dometic, if that's possible, because it looks like this spacer block got crushed because that's the heaviest part where the compressor is. This one didn't get crushed and that one didn't get crushed, so let's just try to aim for right about there. And this one's not quite as thick, so let's see. This one is not nearly as thick as the main gasket, so what we'll do is use the other one too. We'll double it up. So we'll put the thinner one on first, and then follow up with this second thicker one on top. And I'm gonna hope this is definitely more than enough, because that's a bad design by any account. All right, and I think you have to center that in the opening a little bit better, but hope you can see I have a much better gap underneath there now. If after I tighten it up I find I need to add some more foam, I can still do that, but I think we're going to be fine now. Of course, I need to do the exact same thing on that front AC over there, which is why I have 2 of them. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is pre-drill these holes right here. That'll allow this to flex a little bit. Oh, I guess I'll take this one all the way off.